Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of the Drop and Rage. This audio podcast is part of a Lobostics Enigma. This audio podcast is part of a Ztorm and Ostix etiology. This audio podcast is part of the Bookish, and this audio podcast as part of a Ztorm Lobostics production. In this audio podcast today, a look at the research gap and research approach, research question, strength and limitations of a research poster presentation, by Mohammed and team from 2022. The research poster presentation was presented at the International Pediatric Transplant Association in 2022. The publication or the research poster presentation is in around transplant neuroimmunobiology, the immune system, transplant rejection, and neuroendocrinology retrospective. As part of the sort of research gap, the research poster looks to highlight transplant neuroimmunobiology, the immune system, transplant rejection, and neuroendocrinology, through literature, and as part of the research question, chemokines and cytokines which direct cell migration and or activate cells. Chemokines also closely related to cytokines are produced by many cell types in response to infection or physical damage, and they activate and direct effector cells to sites of tissue damage and regulate leukocyte migration or trafficking into tissues. And the research poster looks at an overview of transplant immunobiology. And this work, the research poster was within the remit of a scientist's perspective on laboratory medicine and integrated transplant immunobiology services for CKD recipients. And as part of the strength of the research poster, aims to highlight how specific immunobiological and neuroendocrine markers can reduce chemokine migration and acute allograft rejection, or AAR. The research poster presentation reviews literature over 3 decades and in surrounding immunobiology services in amongst pediatrics and young people sort of immunobiology or pathology services. And as part of the limitations, the review the research poster or the review does not look at how biomarkers could be utilized as part of pathology and immunobiology services to advance clinical services. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast is part of a Drop and Rage. This audio podcast is part of a Lobostics Enigma. This audio podcast is as part of a Ztorm and Ostix etiology. This audio podcast as part of the Bookish, and this audio podcast is part of a Ztorm Lobostics production.